Starting off at the top, we have A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place came to theaters in 2018 and had audiences shocked with this new concept and for their use of sign language. In fact, I saw this in theaters and the movie was so quiet that I felt too intimidated to eat my popcorn. This movie surrounds a world that has been taken over by alien-type creatures. The only way to survive is to stay super quiet as these creatures detect people by sound. Now, in the opening scene of the movie, most of us probably missed this hidden clever detail. As the family goes into the store to load up on food and medicine, you can see shelves covered with bags of unopened chips. Well, that's because chips would be too loud to eat. The crunching noise would most definitely attract these creatures. I definitely would not survive living among these creatures because I love chips. What's your favorite flavor? Comment down below. Mine is ketchup chips. Those are a Canadian delicacy. In our 9th spot, we have Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth is a 2006 fantasy thriller Spanish film directed by Guillermo del Toro. This movie surrounds Ophelia, a young innocent girl whose life begins to evolve into a fairy tale world when she discovers a labyrinth. However, this labyrinth is filled with some creepy creatures. The scene I will be discussing is the one where Ophelia encounters the creature with eyes for hands. It walks around like this. Imagine that I had eyes there. Yeah. Now this scene first takes place in a long, deep red colored hallway which leads into a wide dining hall. The walls of the hallway are deep reddish brown in color and appear wet, giving the illusion to that of blood. The blood color, along with the rough textured walls, parallel the appearance of the inside of a throat. This emphasizes the danger of the place and the fact that it is home to a pale man who eats children. In addition, the paintings of the pale man eating and killing children, along with the dusty pile of children's shoes, foreshadow her fate. Yet she still didn't get the hint. Furthermore, the fireplace screen is the shape of a mouth with sharp teeth. This also parallels this creature's mouth. Honestly, the set design was really well done for this whole movie in my opinion. Coming in at number 8, we have Insidious. Insidious Chapter 1 was actually one of the first scary movies that I fell in love with. I thought that they genuinely had some good pop-up scares, and the series is well done. Now, before I dive further into these series, let me do a quick little story time. So the first time that I watched Insidious, I was over at my friend's house, and we were both watching the opening scene, which people often made fun of because it was like 3 minutes long, it's super long. Well, during this scene, the TV froze and went black. And then when I got up to go and try and check on it and to fix it, the screen came back on and it was this scary woman's face holding a candle, and I scream and I jump back and I have no clue why her face was on the screen that close. It zoomed in, it scared me. But anyway, maybe her house is haunted, who knows. Anyways, in this movie there are several times when you can see the ghosts before they actually appear properly on the screen. In Insidious Chapter 1, you can see a ghost boy facing backwards with his head against the wall, blending in with their coats before he is seen in the next scene dancing. This dude is apparently the master of hide and seek because he was just there in plain sight. The same thing goes for Insidious Chapter 2. When the mother is walking down the house on the phone, she passes by her living room and the ghost can be seen chilling at her desk. When you spot these ghosts in the scene, it just adds another layer of creepiness, knowing that the ghosts can come in and go as they please and are constantly lurking around the family. At number 7, we have The Conjuring. Now, I'm also a fan of the Conjuring series. For those of you who don't know, these movies are based off of true life events and real ghostly encounters, which makes the story that more terrifying. Now, The Conjuring 2 is about a demon taking the form as a nun and tormenting the lives of a family. In order to get rid of this demon, they have to learn its name and banish it back to hell. Now, it takes them a long time to figure out this demon's name. However, if you notice in several scenes, its name, Valak, appears in the background. It can be seen in the kitchen, on the bookshelf, on a windowsill, and even their daughter is making a bracelet that spells out his name. Now, how they didn't see that surprises me, but then again, when I first watched the movie, I never noticed those things too, so I'll be lenient on that one. At number 6, we have Psycho. This 1960 Alfred Hitchcock movie surrounds Norman Bates and his mother Norma Bates. Yes, her name is Norma, and she named her son Norman. How original. Now, from this movie, several remakes have been made, including the Netflix series Bates Motel. one of my favorites actually. In fact, Rihanna actually appears in a couple of the Netflix episodes as Marion Crane, who is one of the main characters in this film. This movie surrounds Norman, who basically is so infatuated with his mother that he ends up embodying her and killing multiple people. It's much more complicated like that, but that's just kind of the gist of it. In this film, there is a really creepy visual that may appear as just a weird transition to the next scene. So what I'm talking about is during a scene when Norman Bates is in the police station, there's a moment of stillness where he just looks directly at the camera and smiles before it transitions into the next scene. But in that transition, it's Norman's face merged with his mother's dead corpse, who he murdered. It's quite creepy. I don't know who came up with that. It's oof. In our 5th spot, we have Final Destination. Ugh, this movie. I watched it as a kid and it made me so paranoid. Like, I couldn't look at household objects the same. I was too afraid that a fridge would fall on me or something after watching these movies. Well, Final Destination is known for being very, out there and extremely gory with crazy situations that realistically wouldn't happen in real life. Now, in a lot of these movies, they often foreshadow the character's death. In fact, that's kind of what the franchise is known for doing. There are way too many to count, but here are some of these examples that you may not have picked up on while hiding under the covers. It's okay, I do it too. In Final Destination 2, Evan is seen cooking a meal for himself. He's a terrible cook, by the way. Like, there was no hand washing and he just missed the pan pouring oil. Like, who does that? But that's not the point. On the fridge beside him, the magnets spell out Hey, H-E-Y-E. As things start to go wrong in his kitchen, the H falls off the fridge, leaving the magnets to spell out I. This is foreshadowing Evan's death, which was a result of getting a ladder impaled in his eye. Now, the next ones are a little more cryptic. In Final Destination 5, 2 of the characters are seen outside of a building called Presage. Presage means a sign or warning that something bad will happen. How fitting. After that, a construction caution sign with an image of a bridge has a small tear, so it looks like the bridge has collapsed, in which it eventually does. And lastly, while one of the characters is at gymnastics, you can see a power cord that resembles a skull face, foreshadowing that her death is near. In this scene, as she is prepping for her routine, her elastic band snaps. This in fact was a foreshadow to her death of a snapped spine. In our 4th spot, we have Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs is a great movie about a shy little lamb who's afraid to talk to his other lamb friends. Just kidding. Silence of the Lambs is a 1991 mystery horror starring Jodie Foster as a young FBI trainee, Clarice, and Anthony Hopkins as Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a cannibal, murderer, and psychiatrist. This movie is a mind bender on its own. However, there was one key scene that passed right over some of the viewers' heads. In a scene between Clarice and Hannibal, he states the famous line, "A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and some nice Chianti." Now, to some, this may sound like just another disturbing line in the film, when in fact, it had a much darker meaning. Now, back in 1988, when this book was originally written, psychiatric patients were often put on monoamine oxidase inhibitors. While taking these inhibitors, they weren't allowed to eat certain foods or else it would result in their death. 3 of the most deadly foods they couldn't eat were liver, fava beans, and red wine. Yet Hannibal Lecter didn't die. So in this scene, he was in fact telling Clarice that he was off his medication, which then leads him to escape and kill a bunch of people. Lastly, another quick little detail that you may not have noticed is that the actual cover art for this film seems to be just a picture of a death head's hawk moth. These moths naturally have a skull looking shape on their body. However, if you look close enough, this skull is actually made of 2 female bodies, symbolizing how Hannibal would go after women, murder them, and then wear their skin. Coming in at number 3, we have It. The remake of the 1990 Stephen King horror movie was proven to be a big success, becoming the highest grossing R-rated horror movie worldwide. Now, this movie is known for the creepy looking clown Pennywise that pops up numerous times throughout the movie to scare the viewers. Basically, Pennywise terrorizes this town every 27 years or so, attacking the children and feeding off of their fears. Now, throughout this movie, Pennywise makes many subtle appearances that you may not have noticed at first glance. One of his first appearances is when one of the kids, Billy, heads down to his basement. Pennywise's yellow glowing eyes can be seen watching him by the stairs before emerging from the water. Pennywise made his next appearance while another one of the kids, Ben, was in the library. He is first seen possessing the body of the librarian, and she just creepily stands there watching Ben in the background. It truly is terrifying. Now, as Ben continues his research, he also comes across some history on the town and on an Easter egg hunt massacre that took the lives of numerous children. Although you may not be able to see it until paused, Pennywise actually appears in this photo, making it seem like all of those children were killed by him. We also have him appear on the brick wall mural behind the kids in another scene. It's literally like, where's Waldo? Where's Pennywise? Lastly, in this movie, there is an eerie scene when the television show that is playing changes to the host and children repeatedly saying, kill him, and then kill them all. If you notice, the children that appear on the show are actually all of Pennywise's victims, including Georgie and the bully that was murdered in the sewers. Next up, in our second spot, we have the 2018 thriller Hereditary. Man, where do I begin with this movie? This movie is just too much for me to handle. Like, I actually felt physically sick while watching it. So on that cheery note, let's discuss it. This movie is about a family who is apparently tied to a cult by their bloodline. The cult was run by the children's grandmother, whose end goal was to summon the demon of hell, Payman. Jeez, I feel like I need to start saging this room or something as I'm talking about it. So in order to do this, the demon needs to inhabit a boy's body from this bloodline. This boy is played by Alex Wolff. Side note, do you guys remember him and his brother Nat Wolff from the Nickelodeon show The Naked Brothers Band? Cause I do. Man, good times. Anyways, so now that we sort of understand the story's concept, let's discuss some things you may not have noticed. In one of the exterior establishing shots of the house, if you zoom in close enough, you can actually see that the house is surrounded by cult members. Terrifying. In another scene, there is a party happening and you can see some of the teens watching a movie. This movie is playing a scene that shows someone getting decapitated, which is a common theme throughout this movie. From his sister cutting off a crow's head, to her getting her own head decapitated, to his mom slicing her head off in front of him, to the ending scene where there are decapitated bodies bowing down to the demon. This is just a huge symbol throughout the movie, and man, I almost lost my head watching this movie. One last detail in this movie surrounds the symbol on the grandmother's necklace. Now, this is the real symbol of Payman, and it can be seen all throughout the film, even on the telephone pole that the sister gets decapitated by. This symbol, along with other dark words like Satany and Zaza, can be seen engraved in the walls of the house if you look for them closely. I'm just getting the chills talking about this. I need to stop. And in our number one spot is Shutter Island. The 2010 film Shutter Island, directed by Martin Scorsese, is a psychological thriller starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Teddy Daniels, a US Marshal. Teddy, alongside his partner Chuck Aole, played by the Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, are sent to Shutter Island to investigate the disappearance of a missing patient from a mental institution of the criminally insane. Now, this film is filled with symbolism, like the constant use of the colors blue and red symbolizing water and blood. Now, what does that have to do with this movie? Well, spoiler, towards the end of the film, we find out that Teddy is a patient on Shutter Island, in fact, the most dangerous patient. The water used throughout the film represents the lake that Teddy's kids drowned in, while the dark red color symbolizes blood from when he shot his wife. Water is definitely a symbol of the truth of his past. In the opening scene when Teddy and Chuck are on the boat to the island, Teddy tells Chuck that he feels sick because of the water. This is a metaphor that he feels sick because he can't handle the truth of what happened to his family. Furthermore, in the movie, there is a scene where Teddy is interrogating patients, and one patient asks for a glass of water, yet when she is drinking it, no glass appears to be visible. Let me show you the scene. This symbolizes how Teddy is trying to block out water as much as he can, since it reminds him of his past. Now, another detail that you may have noticed in this film is a particular statue that is constantly shown in shots when they are in Dr. Colley's office. In particular, in the scene where Teddy suffers from a bad migraine, which is actually just his withdrawal from medication, the lightning flashes and illuminates a statue. This statue is of the Greek god Pan, where the word panic is derived from. This statue emphasizes how Teddy is starting to realize that there is something off about the asylum and how he is slowly starting to panic and slip more into insanity. Now, the biggest detail in this movie that when I discovered this I literally yelled Eureka, well not actually but figuratively, Like, I was so proud of myself. And this has to do with the posters that are seen in Mr. Colley's office. Hanging on the walls in his office are photos of a person getting a lobotomy done and a person hunched over in a cave. Additionally, when Dr. Colley mentioned these photos, he says those paintings are quite accurate. This points out that those photos are foreshadowing upcoming events. When comparing these photos to the scene later on when Teddy imagines that he sees Dr. Sheehan in the cave, it appears as if the painting is an exact representation of the scene. Coincidence? I think not. This highlights that Teddy has had this hallucination of the doctor in the cave before, and that Dr. Colley is aware of this, and so he frames them on his wall in his office as a way to trigger Teddy to remember his past. With regards to the lobotomy photo, well, it is said at the end of the movie, since Teddy just relapsed into his old persona, he went to go get a transorbital lobotomy, done to erase his past permanently.
Number 10. Get Out. Did you know that right from the beginning of the movie, director Jordan Peele gave us a huge hint about the sinister events that were going to take place? The message was just hidden in another language. A Swahili song called Sikaliza, sorry if my pronunciation was off, is played throughout the film, including during its opening. And while it sounds beautiful, the lyrics are actually very foreboding. Translated, this is what the song means. Brother, listen to the ancestors, run. You need to run far, listen to the truth, run to save yourself. A pretty clear warning from the director and the score. The song plays again during the party scene and again when Chris looks at the deer head on the wall, implying that he needs to run or he would be their next trophy. Before we move on to our next entry, give those like and subscribe buttons some love if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 9. Bride of Chucky. In the, some would say, disappointing 1998 movie, there are several references to some classic horror movies, all of which you'd be better off watching than this one. In the evidence locker where Tiffany goes to get Chucky's remains, you can see relics from some of the best horror villains ever. Jason Voorhees' hockey mask, Michael Myers' mask, Leatherface's chainsaw, and Freddy Krueger's bladed glove. Does that mean that all of these movies take place in the same universe? There are plenty of small nods in each of their series to each other, so this is either a love letter to classic horror or an attempt to create a joint universe. Number 8. Scream, 1996. The original Scream changed the game when it came to horror flicks, mixing in a fantastically played out mystery with meta commentary on horror movie tropes puts it at the top of many people's greatest of all time lists, and this clever little Easter egg fits right into those themes. In one scene, Randy Meeks, no relation to myself, who is played by Jamie Kennedy, is sitting on the couch and watching the original Halloween movie. On screen, Jamie Lee Curtis is trying to outrun Michael Myers, and Randy keeps yelling at the screen, "Jamie, look behind you!" But right behind him, Ghostface appears brandishing the signature blade. So, Jamie Kennedy is not only yelling at the movie, but giving a meta warning to himself. Number 7. Saw. The Saw franchise is one of my guilty pleasures. They get more and more ridiculous as the series progresses, but the first installment is a near masterpiece in my opinion, with phenomenal twists and simple, though sometimes silly, execution. Famed horror director and writer James Wan loves an Easter egg and seemingly can't resist hiding things in plain view. Early on in the movie, we see Dr. Gordon speaking with students about one of his cancer patients, which Zepp informs us is named John Kramer, who is later revealed to be Jigsaw himself. If you look close enough during this scene, you can see that the director left a clue to Kramer's evil alter ego. In front of him, on the table, is a notebook on which he has drawn what seems to be an initial blueprint for the reverse bear trap, one of the most iconic of Jigsaw's traps. Really dangling the lead in front of us on that one. I've watched these movies countless times and only recently caught this one. Number 6. Insidious. Also directed by James Wan, Insidious has many Easter eggs that will leave you pausing and rewinding. Chief among them is an early appearance of the ghost boy. When we are following the mother around the house as she does chores, she has a run-in with a terrifying ghost that runs and dances through the house, scaring her half to death. But just before she sees the boy, the audience gets a quick sneak peek. In the laundry room, you can just barely make him out standing under the coat rack before the camera pans away, and he appears again seconds later in a totally different spot. There's another hidden message here left by the director hinting back to Saw, as America's sweetheart Patrick Wilson's character sits in his classroom. On the blackboard behind him is a detention list where the director's name is written with double detention. What did you do, James? And right under that is a crude drawing of Billy the Puppet, Jigsaw's tricycle driving mascot. Number 5. The Conjuring 2. Another movie starring America's sweetheart Patrick Wilson. Don't question it, it's just a fact. But this time he is playing an investigator, Ed Warren. and not the one being possessed. The main villain of the movie is a ghostly demon taking the form of a nun named Vecna, and while the name is revealed later in the movie, it is also hidden multiple times early on. It can be seen being spelled out on the kitchen windowsill, on a bracelet being made, and on the bookshelf of Lorraine Warren, truly showing how much Vecna has infested their world. Also, guess who directed this one? You guessed it, James Wan. Man, keep an eye on this kid, he just might have a career ahead of him. Number 4. Hereditary. Newfound horror genius Ari Aster's first feature film portrays a harrowing tale of cults, obsession, and the passing down of generational trauma, filled to the brim with terrifying imagery and clues as to the character's inevitable demise. This is easily one of the most frightening movies I have seen in years, and not for the jump scares, but because it earns every second of your terror with a slow build that explodes in the last 20 minutes. Throughout the movie, the symbol of the cult of Payman is hidden everywhere. Necklaces, carved into poles, painted in blood on walls, but the cult's followers are just as ever present and well hidden. Near the beginning of the film, Peter is smoking out the window and there is a puff of smoke when he breathes out into the night air. But if you look closely, you can see an icy breath close to the camera, just before Peter breathes out, as though someone is watching him, just out of frame. The cultists appear many times throughout the movie, usually nude. Weirdos. They're hidden behind a pillar in the attic, and in a blink and you'll miss it moment surrounding the entire house when there's a smash cut from day to night. Really creepy knowing that they're watching the horrifying events unfold from the shadows all the time. Number 3. The Thing. Foreshadowing. The Thing is actually going to take up our number 3 and number 2 spots today, and as a true masterpiece of horror, rightly so. The first hidden message in this fantastic film comes in the very first scene, when the Norwegian helicopter pilot is chasing after a dog, shooting wildly and yelling at the research team, but as none of them speak his language, he's mistaken as having gone mad, and after missing the dog with a shot from his rifle, the team shoots the pilot and the movie starts with a bang. What they didn't know, and what the director didn't want you to know, without doing some work anyway, is that the pilot was actually giving a warning to the science team. When translated, this is what the pilot yells just before he's killed. "Get the hell out of there, that is not a dog, it's some sort of thing, it's imitating a dog, it isn't real, get away you idiots." If only one of them could speak Norwegian, the terrors that ensued could have been avoided, but then we wouldn't have gotten to see all those amazing special effects. Number 2. Who is the Thing? The end of the movie is purposely left ambiguous, with Charles and McReady waiting to freeze to death and, quote, see what happens. We are led to believe that one of them is the terrifying, shape-shifting thing, and it's not easy to tell who, but director John Carpenter left us some small clues to solve the mystery for ourselves. Some fans believe that Mac filled the scotch bottle that he hands Childs with gasoline earlier in the movie, and when he takes a sip, Mac's knowing smile proves that he's caught the thing red-handed, as a human would recoil at the taste, but Childs drinks it without hesitation. Another examination of the scene shows that you can clearly see McReady's breath when they are speaking out in the cold, but not Childs, further proving who is still human. The cinematographer Dean Cundey also said that he used eye light to show who was human and who was not, but others still believe that neither of them have been infected, and that the ending shows the paranoia and obsession dooming the human race as the monster lies in wait for its next victims. And finally, our number 1 spot goes to Ari Aster's Midsommar. This beautifully haunting film sees a young woman who is held back by the traumatic deaths of her family, traveling to Sweden with a friend to participate in a once-in-a-century festival in their village. Things go absolutely off the rails from there, and I don't have time to explain everything, but I don't have to, because the director left the entire movie's plot in plain view from the very beginning. The movie opens with a tapestry, which appears to show the passing of the seasons, but if you look closely, after a rewatch, you can see many of the movie's events played out right there. From the loss of Danny's family to people leaping to their own deaths, it seems that it was all predestined. There are other murals in the bunkhouse which show some more specific images, like the mating ritual and the burning bear, showing how absolutely nothing has been in the main character's control the whole movie. Heck, there's even a painting in Danny and Christian's apartment of a girl in a flower crown kissing a bear, their final fates in the film. There is so much more hidden imagery in this movie that relates to past trauma, irrational fears, and predestination that it deserves multiple rewatches. In fact, I think I'm gonna go home and watch it tonight just to see what else I missed.
Starting us off at number 10 is Batman Begins. I bloody love this Batman trilogy, like I cannot fault it at all. Like Christian Bale was impeccable, and whenever I say I'm not a Marvel girl, it's because I'm a DC girl girl and a Batman girl just through and through. Either way, the first movie in the trilogy came out back in 2005, and during the closing scenes of the movie, James Gordon, one of the only honest cops left in Gotham, reveals to Batman that there's a new criminal on the scene. The camera then shows the audience a clear evidence baggie, and inside of it the Joker's calling cards. So we know by then the Joker's coming in the sequel, but if you pause it there and zoom in, you'll catch something even better. The evidence baggie label shows that the evidence was signed in by someone called J. Kerr. J. Kerr, short for Joe Kerr, which is an alias the Joker adopted for years. So hence, really, the Joker's been tempting and teasing Batman to bring him down for years and come after him, longer than fans watching the movie initially thought. This one made me so excited, I was like, it has to be the first one we talk about, I don't even care. Get it? Kerr. Now it's just this video is just gonna be smooth sailing after that. Executed the joke, all good. Coming in at number 9 is Jurassic Park. The original one scared the out of me when I watched it on DVD when I was young. I love Jurassic World with Chris Pratt as well, I thought it was fab. So honestly, just another banger for the list. Here we go. So the first movie in the franchise came out back in 1990, and if you haven't seen any of the Jurassic franchise, it's basically about a theme park full of cloned dinosaurs. Either way, in the first movie, the scientists thought they could curb the danger of growing dinosaurs by blocking their reproduction. And they did that by only growing female dinosaurs. Now the maths and chaos theorist Ian Malcolm warns all of them that, listen, growing only females will be a major problem, you guys, you need to fix that. But before he even warned them and did that, we get that same warning in a hidden message. On their ride to the island, paleontologist Alan Grant struggles putting his seatbelt on, and that doesn't really seem that significant when it's happening, but if you look closer, you'll realize he's struggling because he's trying to connect two female ends. Instead of giving up or swapping buckles, he just ties them up, which also sort of foreshadows a problem will get dealt with somehow in the movie as well, just as Alan sorted it out in the beginning. At number 8 we have RoboCop. So this is a really old one, and admittedly I haven't even seen the movie. It came out in 1987, like a full 10 years before I was born, so I feel like you guys can like cut me some slack for that. I wasn't even an idea at the time. Either way, I'm assuming a lot of you haven't seen it, so to summarize, it's set in the future in a crime-filled version of Detroit, and it centers around RoboCop, who is a police officer who got killed by a gang and then revived as some superhuman cyborg. See, now you don't even have to watch the movie, I just told you the whole thing, the whole plot. Need I say more? No. Either way, despite the whole religion versus science debate, and especially because the movie is about a half man, half machine thing, there are actually a lot of hidden biblical messages in the movie. Alex Murphy, the man who becomes RoboCop, is literally Jesus. Think about it, he's the hero of this corrupt town, he gets killed, then resurrected, and then emerges as a savior. At one point he even walks on water, like, come on people, Jesus. More and more audience members started picking up on this link, and even the director Paul Verhoeven confirmed RoboCop was his vision of an American Jesus, but it was meant to be just really low-key. I mean, if we're trying to imagine an American Jesus, I mean, I don't know if RoboCop is the best parallel for him, but I mean, I definitely appreciate what Paul was trying to do. I mean, good for you, Paul. Filling our number 7 slot is Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Now, if you're a comedy fanatic, then you've definitely seen this movie and all of Will Ferrell's movies, to be honest. It came out in 2004, and if you haven't seen it, it's basically set in the 70s, and it focuses on the action news format that was really popular at the time. It focuses on a TV station where Ferrell and his female counterpart clash a bunch, and then funniness and drama ensues. Either way, a really funny gag was concealed in the movie that most people didn't even pay much attention to, since the shot itself looks really mundane, and honestly it wouldn't really stand out to anyone who isn't a fluent Spanish speaker. Either way, in one of the scenes, Veronica Corningstone, the female counterpart, goes to a Mexican restaurant with her colleagues, and the restaurant is called Escupimos en su Alimento. I hope I said that right. Probably not, but I tried. And that sounds really delightful off the tongue, not my tongue, but somebody else's, except when you translate it, it means we spit in your food. There you have it. Now at number 6 is Sunshine. This movie came out in 2007, and if you haven't seen it, it basically takes place in 2057 and is about a crew of astronauts that go on a mission to try and reignite the dying sun. Now while the crew is on their way to the sun in a spaceship dubbed Icarus 2, they found the distress beacon of Icarus 1, the spaceship sent on the same mission 7 years prior, which never returned to Earth. Dun dun dun. Now the crew decide 2 ships are better than 1 and decide to board the other ship and control it as well. When they get on board Icarus 1, the crew members' flashlight beams keep shining directly into the camera and obviously by default at the audience. And each time this happens, Danny Boyle spliced in hidden pictures in the frames of the now dead Icarus 1 members. Most people didn't pick up on this, but what makes it even more creepy is the fact that pictures are all from a Hawaiian themed party that happened before their mission that clearly crashed and burned. They're all smiling, laughing, enjoying, and it's just a really morbid parallel. And in that, Danny Boyle sort of reveals the crew's fate to us without actually revealing it to us. Creepy as hell. Coming in at number 5 is King Kong. So I feel like this one needs no explanation whatsoever because I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of King Kong, regardless of if they've watched it or not. Released in 2005, the remake pretty much smashed the box office out of the window, which was no surprise. Either way, King Kong aside, there are a lot of movies that use Morse code in them, and I'm pretty sure 90% of us have no idea how to translate that. We just trust the subtitles are correct and that's what they're saying. And if you did that during King Kong, then you missed a major tongue-in-cheek message the director planted in there. Now right before reaching Skull Island, the SS Venture's captain intercepts a coded message talking about the arrest of Carl Denham. Now the audible Morse code part doesn't actually translate to anything about Carl's arrest. If you actually do the research, it translates to "show me the monkey," which is really just a homage to the big ape himself. So think twice next time you think about trusting Morse code subtitles. You're probably wrong. And so am I. And I always will be, because I'll be too lazy to research it. At number 4 is The Social Network. This is a small one if I'm honest, but I still thought it was pretty cool, so I was like, let me pop it in there. So if you haven't seen the movie, are you living under a rock? It came out in 2010 and it's basically the story of the founding members of Facebook and all the lawsuits they endured and how the whole thing sort of just came to be. It was directed by David Fincher, who's a self-proclaimed Fight Club lover, so because of that, there's a very clear hidden homage in the movie. When Jesse Eisenberg, aka Mark Zuckerberg, checks out Facebook on his computer, the words Tyler Durden's photos are very visible on screen. Wow, honestly, if Tyler Durden added me on Facebook, I would have slid into that inbox so damn fast. You guys wouldn't even see me. I would have blinked and I've been in there. Filling our number 3 slot is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Released in 1988, the movie was a live-action animation centering around a version of Hollywood from the 40s where humans and cartoon characters just coexist. Roger Rabbit gets accused of murdering some businessman and the plot follows Eddie Valiant, a private detective trying to save his ass, essentially. And of course, when Roger Rabbit is involved, then our resident hottie Jessica Rabbit is involved as well. And despite the movie being advertised as family friendly, there's a very not safe for work scene in that almost nobody noticed during its release. During the part where Jessica and Eddie flee in Benny the Cab, and when the cab crashes and Jessica tumbles out in her deep slit dress, her panty area is exposed and turns out she's not wearing any. When the news came out about this, it was a freaking ruckus. Within minutes of opening, it was sold out completely. And think about it, back then there were no public nip slips or anything like that, and even if there were, it was very hard to access it online. Either way, if you pause in that scene, you can definitely see her nether regions, but it's smooth like a Barbie doll, but still scandalous. Now at number 2 is Black Swan. So Black Swan came out in 2010 and it's quite a famous movie, so I feel like it doesn't need that much explanation either. Natalie Portman plays the protagonist who's a ballerina and is going for the role of the black and white swan in her ballet company's new season where they're gonna put on Swan Lake. Love that movie, love that, love it. I watched the Barbie version, it was great. Now she does White Swan brilliantly, but is low-key at portraying Black Swan. She starts to put more and more pressure on herself and that causes her to lose grip on reality. Now the film is essentially about Portman's total mental collapse as she strives for perfection. But during the movie's club scene where Portman's character takes acid, there are so many shots inserted in that scene that are too fast to see unless your finger is glued to the pause button. You can see Nina, who's Portman, being stalked by characters of the ballet behind her in one shot, including the character she plays. And Another one is Nina dancing with the theater director who isn't even at the club. The camera then follows Portman and the characters from the club into her room, where all of a sudden everyone magically becomes Portman. She gets surrounded by different versions of herself from other parts of the movie, and it's quite screwed up, but you never even see it. Thankfully though, since we're all lazy, someone slow-moed the hell out of that scene and uploaded it onto YouTube, so you can watch that video if you can't be bothered to play finger hockey. Which I can't. And finally, at number 1 is The Shining. I don't even think this film needs any introduction whatsoever, but if you haven't seen it, I don't know how. It's a horror movie that was released back in 1980 and was directed by Stanley Kubrick. Either way, the plot follows Jack Torrance, a recovering alcoholic and author who moves into the isolated Overlook Hotel with his family in order to be its off-season caretaker. Despite his son having a horrible premonition about the hotel, the three move in anyway. The hotel and the people in it turn Jack into a murderous psychopath. And to help visually depict Jack's slide into insanity, Kubrick skewed the layout of the hotel big time by making it physically impossible to make. Like, the hotel is geographically impossible. Fans have mapped it out in intricate detail, and they found rooms that overlap, windows that shouldn't exist, illogical walls, etc. The fact the whole hotel is an illusion distorts the viewer's perception even more, like Jack himself. So while following Jack encounter all these ghosts in the hotel, we completely forget that the hotel itself defies the laws of physics completely. But I guess we're just gonna sweep that under the rug.